Part 18. Across the Heavens, Marvel's Mechanical Hunter. Author, De Chuanchi. Chapter 171. Hearing this, Yejuju couldn't help but feel proud. After all, being able to control S.H.I.E.L.D. in the Marvel world made him happy. Diamond suit, diamond suit, diamond suit. Being happy, Yejuju put a finger deep in his heart and said, "My request is very simple, that is. As long as I don't do anything to harm you, please don't bother me." Okay. Hearing this, Coulson showed a surprised expression as Yejuju expected, and asked coquettishly, Is it that simple? Only this one request?" "Yes." Yejuju leaned back on the sofa with satisfaction, saying only one word and then stopped talking. Hearing this, Coulson lowered his head to think, and quickly recalled the conditions that Fury told him not to embarrass Yejuju, and he had a plan in his mind. Afterwards, Coulson raised his head and said to Yejuju, "I can agree to your conditions, but we also have conditions. As long as you agree and do it, I promise that S.H.I.E.L.D. will not embarrass you." Hearing this, Yejuju naturally reacted that the reason why S.H.I.E.L.D. made the request was that they were worried about him. What he meant by not making things difficult for himself was that he would not be arrested for the Kingpin and Dr. Lizard incidents, which meant that the two incidents would be over, regardless of whether there was evidence or not. Yejuju was quite satisfied with this result. Thinking of this, Yejuju stretched out his hand and said to Coulson, "Deal, I promise you, I will not hurt anyone easily unless it is absolutely necessary, okay? This is my biggest concession. How about it?" Coulson was naturally satisfied with Yejuju's promise. Of course, he knew what Yejuju meant. As long as no one provokes him, he will not hurt ordinary people at will, and this result is within the acceptable range of S.H.I.E.L.D. As for those villains who provoked Yejuju, Coulson would not sympathize with them. Maybe someone would say that villains have their own laws to punish them, and Yejuju has no right to deal with them. S.H.I.E.L.D. is a national organization, how could it agree to Yejuju's conditions? Nonsense, S.H.I.E.L.D.'s goal is to protect the Earth, and the enemies are people with special abilities or aliens, so how can they have time to care about the lives of a few gangsters? Even if these people died, what would S.H.I.E.L.D. have to do with them? After the conditions were discussed, Coulson smiled and shook Yejuju's hand and said, "Okay. I hope Mr. Ye will do what he said. In addition, we look forward to Mr. Ye finding the whereabouts of Captain Me as soon as possible." After that, Coulson and Yejuju shook hands lightly, then let go of each other's hands, stood up, and walked towards the door. After seeing Coulson off, Yejuju sat back on the sofa with a sense of relief, temporarily putting aside the threat of S.H.I.E.L.D. The next moment, Yejuju remembered the task of finding Steve that the system had issued earlier. Through the movie, he knew that Steve fell in the Arctic, but how big is the Arctic? The total area is 21 million square kilometers, 8 million square kilometers of land, and 13 million square kilometers of ocean ice. With such a large area, where can he find a crashed plane? Thinking of this, Yejuju's head couldn't help but hurt from time to time. He began to regret why he was so ungrateful and took on the task of finding Captain Me. But since the mission has been accepted, although the experience is only 1,000 points, it is still meat no matter how small the mosquito leg is, so just find a way to complete it. Thinking of this, Yejuju sank his consciousness into the mechanical space. After searching for a while, Yejuju did not find the right tools and mechanical creatures, and could not help but sigh. At this time, the Red Queen, who had not heard from for several days, suddenly spoke. "Sir, this world is so wonderful. I actually found some interesting news from some special channels. Do you want to know?" Hearing this, Yejuju had something in his mind and said listlessly, "Oh, what is the news? Tell me." "Sir, I found that there are some special people in this world. Let's not talk about the kid wearing a tights and dressed as Spider-Man. He is your man. In addition, there is actually a man and a woman. The man can run at the speed of sound, and the woman can use mental power to control the enemy's objects. That's not all. There is actually a man who can transform, which is the most powerful. It can actually transform into a giant 3 meters tall, and its strength is far greater than that of ordinary people, and it can be inferior to swords and guns. How about it? Sir, is this information useful to you? Hearing this, Yejuju would know who these people Red Queen found. The former is naturally his best friend, and partner Spider-Man Parker. The latter must be Quicksilver Pietro and his sister, Scarlet Witch Wanda. The last one, there is nothing to say, is naturally the ceiling of Marvel Earth's combat power, the Hulk. Yejuju is naturally familiar with the latter three people. As for the fact that there was no news about these three people before, it was naturally because the news was blocked. However, these news may be attractive to others, but Yejuju, who was worried about the mission at this time, was not interested. So, Red Queen did not get the response she expected, so she asked. What's wrong? Sir. Why do you feel that you have something difficult? Can you tell me, maybe I can help you solve it? Hearing this, Yejuju did not have much hope for Red Queen, after all. Red Queen's strongest ability is still on the internet. Otherwise, how could she find the information of the above people on the internet? However, since Hong Ho asked, Yejuju didn't want to not answer, lest Hong Ho feel disappointed, so he sighed and said. Oh, I want to find someone under the Arctic ice, but it's too big, I can't do it and I don't have so many resources, so I'm a little worried. Yejuju just wanted to talk about his worries, and didn't expect Hong Ho to have a way. In short, he just wanted to find someone to pour out his troubles. But he never expected that Red Queen would give him a surprise. Sir, I would like to ask. Is the person you are looking for a body under the ice, or a living thing preserved in a metal coffin and buried under the ice? Maybe, I can really help you. Hearing this, Yejuju was shocked at first, then happy, sat up from the sofa and said. I am looking for a superhero of this country during World War II. He crashed his plane in the Arctic, Red Queen. Do you have a way to find him? Oh, was he buried in a plane crash? If so, maybe I can really help you. The surprise came too quickly, Yejuju hurriedly asked. Really? Red Queen. What do you have to say? Tell me. Hearing this, Red Queen did not hesitate at all, and then said. Yes, sir. Have you forgotten that my system has the function of scanning metal? As long as you can manufacture the corresponding equipment according to the drawings I gave. Install the equipment on the mechanical drone, at the speed of the mechanical drone. Across the Heavens, Marvel's Mechanical Hunter. Author, De Chuan-Chi. Chapter 172. After a pause, the Red Queen continued. We will definitely be able to scan the entire North Pole in a short period of time and find the crashed plane that Sir is looking for. Hearing this, Yejuju was overjoyed and hurriedly urged. Very good, Red Queen, you are so awesome. Give me the list of materials quickly, and I will go out and buy them right away. Yes, sir, I will pass the detailed list to Mr. As soon as the Hong Queen's sweet voice sounded, Yejuju had a series of names of materials and the required quantities in his mind. Yejuju went out impatiently, got in the car and went to buy materials one by one. When Yejuju returned home after purchasing the materials, he met Parker outside the door who came to see him. As soon as he saw Yejuju, Parker immediately cheered and rushed towards Yejuju. I haven't seen Yejuju for several days, and Parker really misses Yejuju so much. Not to mention that although he is now in school and no one bullies him anymore, and he has even developed a relationship with the girl he likes, his favorite is Yejuju. Yejuju saw Parker rushing toward him with a face full of joy. To be honest, he was very touched. Parker rushed to Yejeju and was about to reach out to hug Yejeju when he realized that Yejeju was holding many things in his arms. He was afraid of knocking the things out of Yejeju's arms and was about to hug Yejeju. Relying on his strong physical fitness and super strength, Parker was able to do a somersault 30 centimeters away from Yejeju before abruptly stopping his forward momentum. After landing and standing up, he touched his head in embarrassment and said with a smile, "I'm sorry, yet. I'm so excited. I haven't seen you for so long." Hearing this, Yejeju also laughed and said nonchalantly, "It doesn't matter. In fact, I miss you too. Let's go and talk about it inside the house." After saying that, Yejeju took Parker all the way back to the door, stuffed the things in his arms into Parker's arms and said, "These are electronic components and other materials. You hold them for me and I will open the door." While talking, he took out the key and opened the door, and walked into the house with Parker looking confused. Parker followed with a large bag of things, put the things on the coffee table, and finally couldn't help but ask, "Yeah, do you want to do something? Why don't you invite me to help you? You know, I am also very powerful." Hearing this, Yejeju also reacted and remembered that Little Spider was also an incredible scientist with extremely strong hands-on skills. Otherwise, he would not have independently developed and manufactured a spider silk launcher. Later, he even improved the spider silk launcher to restrain Electro Max and defeat Electro. Thinking of this, Yejeju didn't want to hide anything from Parker, so he sat on the sofa and poured water for the two of them, while saying, "Thank you, Parker. I'm actually going to make a metal scanner that I want to put on my mechanical drone." As expected, Parker's attention was caught as he finished speaking, and he immediately said excitedly, "Really? Do you need my help?" "Yeah. Of course, with cheap tools to help me, there is no reason to delay," Yejeju answered immediately. After saying that, both of them burst into laughter. The time was almost up, and Yejeju cooked a dinner for the two of them as usual. After finishing the meal, the two of them entered Yejeju's temporary studio and garage with a large bag of electronic components. It must be said that after this period of time, Parker was completely influenced by Yejeju and fell deeply in love with Chinese cuisine. Parker's favorite is the beef stew with potatoes made by Yejeju. A meal of potato stewed beef not only satisfies Americans' preference and demand for beef, but also tastes the unique Chinese delicacy. The scanner is not that easy to make. Even under the guidance of the Red Queen, it took the two of them several hours to make a scanner for the first time. Looking at the palm-sized object in front of them, the two of them excitedly high-fived each other and cheered. Next, Yejeju did not shy away from Parker and released a mechanical drone with a wave of his hand. The appearance of the drone immediately startled Parker. He had never seen what Yejeju's mechanical drone looked like, and originally thought that the drone was just the same as other drones. But who would have thought that Yejeju's mechanical drone would be such a big thing? Yejeju took a step forward, followed the instructions of the Red Queen, installed the scanner in his hand on the drone, and couldn't wait to open the garage door, allowing the Red Queen to control the drone and fly out of the garage. As soon as the drone flew out of the garage, the situation scanned by the drone came to Yejeju's mind. Countless cars of various sizes, trash bins, buildings, etc., all with the influence of metal target frames, all appeared in his mind, making Yejeju's brain feel uncomfortable for a while. In order to prevent his brain from being overly headached by this information, Yejeju had to ask the Red Queen not to transmit these images to him for the time being, so that he felt better. After testing that the scanner could be used normally, Yejeju asked Queen Hong to fly the drone back to the garage, and then continued to build the scanner with Parker. With the previous successful experience, the next manufacturing will be much simpler. Around 7 o'clock in the morning, the two finally produced 3 more scanners and installed them on the remaining 3 drones one by one. After not sleeping all night, the two of them were in superhuman physical condition but not tired. Yejuju made Parker a simple breakfast and sent Parker out to school. Then Yejuju also went out and boarded a plane to the nearest city to the North Pole. When Yejuju arrived in Anchorage, Fury and Coulson also received the news. The two were discussing this matter in the office. "Coulson, you said that you knew about Steve. Is this possible? You know, since Steve crashed, the government has sent a large number of people to look for him, but they have never found him. Can he?" "Sir, I am not sure. But I think this is still possible. After all, he still has some special means. Maybe he has got some news that we don't know, right? Besides, isn't he in the city closest to the North Pole now? Isn't that where Steve crashed when he sent back the last message?" Speaking of this, Coulson paused before continuing. "Sir, you see. Should we also send people over to monitor nearby?" Fury habitually tapped his fingers on the desk. Of course, he understood what Coulson meant. It's just that he's worried that Yejuju will do something with Steve's body after he finds Steve first. Also, Coulson admires Steve so much, maybe he wants to see him first. But no matter what, Fury has to be on guard. Sending someone over can not only monitor Yejuju, but also help his subordinates, so of course he has to agree. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Across the Heavens, Marvel's Mechanical Hunter. Author, Dachuan Chi. Chapter 173. Thinking of this, Fury raised his head and said to Coulson. "So, you immediately take a team of people and rush there. I hope readers will remember our domain name Taiwan Novel Network rightward arrow dot. But don't act rashly before he finds it, understand?" Hearing this, Coulson stood up excitedly and replied hurriedly. "Yes, Director, please rest assured. I know what to do, I will take people there right away." After saying that, he hurriedly got up and left the office. Looking at Coulson, who was in a hurry to leave, Fury rarely smiled. On the top floor of a hotel in Anchorage, Yejuju took advantage of the 5 people around him to release 4 mechanical drones from the space, and let Red Queen control the drones to fly into the clouds. Back in the guest room, Yejuju, who had nothing to do, turned on the TV and watched it. Just over an hour later, Red Queen's message came. "Sir, 4 drones have entered the Arctic range and have turned on the scanning device. In order not to affect you, I will send the target image back to you after the drone finds a similar target buried underground." "Well, okay, Red Queen, you are really my good helper, Red Queen. Hee, it's my honor to serve you, sir." And in a building not far from the hotel where Yejuju met, in the room opposite Yejuju's room, Coulson has brought people to live here and began to monitor Yejuju's every move. At the same time, Obadiah was in the underground test area of Stark Building, furious with several scientists. Beside him was a Mark I armor designed by Tony that was enlarged several times. Of course, compared with Tony's crude and simple armor, this armor is not only much taller than the original Mark I armor, but the equipment on it is not much inferior to Tony's Mark II. If Tony or Yejuju were here, they would have discovered that. Its weapon is the mechanical hand on its left hand, which is not only powerful, but can easily lift a 1,000-pound object, and can even break a 1-meter thick concrete wall with one punch. On its right hand is a 20 mm caliber rotary cannon, which is powerful enough to penetrate any vehicle. The left arm is equipped with a 6-round small missile, and there are anti-tank rockets on the shoulder, which can fly high in the sky for high speed. Of course, due to the negligence of the scientists, it is still the same as in the original drama, and it cannot fly too high, otherwise it will be frozen. But even so, the problem that bothers everyone is still in front of them. Because there is no manufacturing blueprint for the small energy reactor, they are missing the most critical component, that is, the power drive problem. Look, Obadiah was scolding these scientists and venting his anger. You are all the best scientists in the group, why can't you be better than a playboy who only knows how to eat, drink and have fun all day long, huh? That's fine, after all, he is just one person, and what about you? A large group of people are not as good as him, why do I pay you high salaries? Did we spend so much money to support a bunch of waste like you? Several scientists were scolded by Obadiah and couldn't raise their heads, but no one dared to refute him. Although they are all top scientists in this field, when compared with Tony, that freak, no one dared to act big in front of Tony. After scolding, no one contradicted him, and no one could give him reliable opinions, so Obadiah had no choice. Turning around angrily, Obadiah saw the huge reactor built by Tony's father Howard Stark standing in front of him, which was running and providing electricity to the entire group. His anger rose again. Turning around, Obadiah's face was dark, and he scolded again. Can you do it? Tony can shrink the big guy behind me to his chest. And you? The things are in front of you, and you have the drawings. Why can't you shrink the reactor and use it on my Iron Overlord? Huh. Hearing this, one of the scientists finally stood up and said to Obadiah, Boss, this is actually not our fault. Even though there are drawings and real objects in front of us, it is not as difficult as you imagine to shrink a reactor with such a large amount of energy to the size of a fist. Hey. We are not as good as Tony's father. Son of a bitch. Unless. Hearing the scientist's excuses, Obadiah couldn't help but get angry, and seeing him hesitant, he couldn't help but scold loudly. Unless what? Just tell me. You know, the military is waiting for our Iron Overlord to be successfully researched. This is a huge order, you know? Idiot. The scolded scientist heard this, fearing that Obadiah would vent his anger on him, and immediately replied. Unless the boss can get the reactor on Tony's chest, with the real thing, we can easily reverse the design drawings and research and manufacture a smaller version of the reactor in the shortest time. Hearing this, Obadiah stopped getting angry and fell silent. His silence made all the scientists present nervous, and no one dared to speak to disturb Obadiah. After a long while, Obadiah waved his hand to drive several people out, looking up at the reactor and the Iron Overlord in front of him. To be honest, he was very tempted by the scientist's proposal, but he was still a little afraid. After all, Tony was just like Howard, a stone in the toilet, smelly and hard. It was not an easy thing to get the reactor from Tony. And it was not impossible to rob it by force, but the price he had to pay was not something he could afford, so he had to think of other ways to do it. Obadiah was hesitant here, and Yejeju had received several images sent back by Red Queen. Among them were many fighter planes from World War II and ships that had sunk here for many years. But there was no bomber belonging to Hydra that he wanted to find, which was the Naga-I plane that Steve had driven at the time. Yejeju was not in a hurry. Anyway, he didn't need to go in there to freeze. It would just take some time, and he could wait. Yejeju could wait, but Carlson on the other side was restless, constantly criticizing Yejeju in his heart. There was no way, when they arrived, Yejeju had just released the drone. Of course, he didn't know that Yejeju's method of finding was so simple, and he was eager to see his idol Steve as soon as possible. Seeing Yejeju lying leisurely on the sofa, he naturally got anxious and angry. What Yejeju didn't know was that in addition to Carlson criticizing him, there was another person cursing him. This person was none other than Yejeju's forgotten partner, Sky. Across the Heavens, Marvel's Mechanical Hunter. Author, De Chuan-Chi. Chapter 174. At this time, Sky had not contacted Yejeju for several days. Google search reading. There was no way, Yejeju had warned her at the beginning not to contact him unless there was something special. If Yejeju doesn't take the initiative to contact her, she can't contact Yejeju even if she has Yejeju's phone number. She couldn't tell what she was thinking, but Sky just missed Yejeju and wanted to talk to Yejeju. Perhaps unconsciously, she had been deeply attracted to Yejeju. Yejeju, who is the same age as him and is young, handsome, and powerful, gave her a strong sense of security after wandering around without friends or relatives since she was a child. Without knowing it, Sky wanted to stay with Yejeju. She knew that Yejeju was in a hotel in Anchorage, and she felt uncomfortable when she saw that he had time to travel but forgot about herself. As a 16-year-old girl, she didn't realize that she had fallen in love with Yejeju. In despair, she could only pay attention to Yejeju silently, and she could only curse Yejeju secretly. Because the mechanical drone has not yet been modified with the reactor, its endurance is still the original 12 hours. It will take a bit of luck to find Steve's crashed plane within this time. This wait lasted for 6 hours, just when Yejeju was about to give up and let Queen Hong fly the drone back to replenish energy. An unexpected surprise appeared. The Red Queen's surprised voice came into Yejeju's mind. "Sir, I found something interesting. Please take a look, sir." After saying that, a huge image was transmitted into Yejeju's mind. This image was different from ordinary fighter bombers. It was much larger than them and smaller than those cargo ships. It was obviously the shape of an airplane, which immediately piqued Yejeju's interest. And Yejeju felt that if nothing unexpected happened, that would be the target he was looking for. Excited, Yejeju immediately asked the Red Queen to mark the location of the target on the map, and then asked the Red Queen to fly the drone back. Yejeju was also thinking about what to prepare for entering the North Pole. It was another 2 hours later that Yejeju went up to the top floor of the hotel again. Under the shocked gaze of Coulson and others, they watched 4 huge drones land on the top floor one after another, and were collected by Yejeju into space. At this moment, Coulson realized that Yejeju was actually a special human with spatial powers. This was actually not because Yejeju was careless. He had thought that he would be monitored by S.H.I.E.L.D. when he came to the North Pole, but he just had to do this. The purpose is also very simple. It is also a good thing to reveal some of your abilities to them appropriately and make S.H.I.E.L.D. fear you. Anyway, with Tony here, they didn't dare to do anything to them. However, Yejeju, who had considered everything comprehensively, still overlooked one issue, and that was the Hydras hidden in S.H.I.E.L.D. And in Coulson's team, there is a secret agent of Hydra. Inevitably, information about Yejeju will also reach Pierce. It even aroused the covetousness of Pierce and others, and secretly sent people to control Yejeju in the hands of Hydra. When Yejeju walked out of the hotel to buy cold-proof supplies, Coulson followed him without hesitation. When Coulson saw Yejeju taking action, he guessed that Yejeju already had specific information about Steve. While asking others to buy cold-proof supplies, I decided to meet Yejeju and have a showdown. When Yejeju had almost finished his purchase, Coulson stopped Yejeju outside the door and said to Yejeju very humbly, "Mr. Ye, can we sit down and talk?" Seeing Coulson taking the initiative to appear in front of him, Yejeju knew that this time S.H.I.E.L.D. really valued him, or it would be more accurate to say that he was afraid of him. After all, S.H.I.E.L.D. would not dare to manipulate a person with strong combat power and even superpowers. However, it is necessary to talk to Coulson. After all, even if Yejeju found the place where Steve crashed, he would not have the suitable machinery to find Steve from under the ice. The two found a coffee shop, sat on the side of the road, ordered coffee, and sat down. Coulson didn't waste any words and said straightforwardly, "Mr. Ye, have you found the exact information? Can we work together to find Team Me?" Yejeju was not polite, nodded and said, "Yes, I have determined the location of the crash, and I can also cooperate with you. After all, it is not easy to open the ice. With your help, it will be easier for me, right?" Hearing this, Carlson finally breathed a sigh of relief and knew that both he and the director had guessed Yejuju's purpose wrong. Originally, they thought that the reason why Yejuju wanted to find Steve was because he had a plot against the super soldiers. But this time, Yejuju agreed to accompany Coulson so easily, but it seemed that he was overthinking it. Thinking of this, Coulson put away his usual smile and said sincerely, "Thank you, Mr. Ye. If you need anything from us, please just ask and we will be ready." Well, the first choice is vehicles, as well as cutting machines for cutting ice, and cranes that can work on ice. Well, that's it? Yejuju said casually, paused and continued. "Give you an hour, and we'll set off." After saying that, Yejuju drank the coffee in front of him in one gulp, stood up and said, "I will go back to the hotel and wait for you, and you can pick me up when the time comes. Oh, and this coffee, you treat me." After saying that, Yejuju picked up the supplies in his hand and walked out. Looking at Yejuju leaving, Coulson curled his lips speechlessly, took a few sips of coffee, and then called the waiter to settle the bill and leave. It must be said that S.H.I.E.L.D. is really rich and powerful, and its mobility is also very good. In just 40 minutes, it prepared all the supplies needed to enter the Arctic. Just after an hour, Coulson personally went to the hotel to invite Yejuju to set off. After Yejuju got on the car, the group came to the edge of the Arctic, where the cutting machine and crane that had been prepared long ago were waiting here. Led by Yejuju and Coulson, the group entered the white world of ice and snow. After a day and a night, the group arrived at the destination under the leadership of Yejuju. After getting off the car, everyone looked at the hard, white ice in front of them. If Yejuju hadn't been sure that the plane crashed here, Coulson believed that it would be difficult for them to find the crashed plane. Under Yejuju's command, the cutter started to operate and began to cut the ice at the designated location. An hour later, a circular hole was cut out on the top of the ice. Strangely, under the ice was not cold sea water, but a black fuselage. Across the Heavens, Marvel's Mechanical Hunter. Author, Dachuan Chi. Chapter 175. Seeing the situation in front of him, Coulson said to Yejuju excitedly, "Thank you very much, Mr. Ye, for allowing us to find our hero, allowing his body to be buried, and giving everyone the opportunity to thank and mourn him." Hearing this, Yejuju showed a smile on his lips and said pointedly, "Perhaps, what you get is not a cold corpse, but an American captain who can be resurrected, maybe. Don't forget, he is a super soldier." Yejuju's words made Coulson unable to help being shocked and surprised. Even when he spoke, he trembled and asked eagerly, "Yeah, Mr. Ye, what do you mean? Do you know anything? Is Steve not dead yet?" Hearing this, Yejuju smiled mysteriously and said, "You may have forgotten one thing, Steve is a super soldier. He is a super soldier who can jump from a plane without a parachute without dying. Haha, just cold. I don't think Steve will freeze to death, maybe he is just temporarily frozen." Hearing this, Coulson fell silent, unable to tell what he was thinking. Anyway, of course he hoped that what Yejuju said was true, and he also hoped that he could see the resurrected Steve with his own eyes. The cutting machine started running again, cutting the aircraft shell quickly. In a flash of sparks, a gap 50 centimeters in diameter was cut out of the plane. Yejuju, who had an ulterior motive, was about to take the initiative to check, when he was stopped by Coulson, who was worried and said, "Mr. Ye, let me go down with you." Hearing this, Yejuju couldn't help but sigh. He didn't want to break up with S.H.I.E.L.D. yet, so he had to agree. In fact, Yejuju remembered it on the way here. As explained in the play, the cosmic cube, the space gem among the 6 infinity gems, fell into the North Pole with Steve. Originally, Yejuju wanted to go down early and get the gem in his hands, but Coulson disrupted his plan. It really complied with that sentence. Plans never change quickly. However, Yejeju didn't want to become an enemy of S.H.I.E.L.D. because of the gem. In addition, Yejeju also took a chance. Hopefully Coulson will focus all his attention on Steve and ignore the existence of the Space Stone, giving himself the opportunity to take the Space Stone. Unfortunately, this wish ultimately came true. After getting off the plane with Yejeju, it was indeed what Yejeju thought. After seeing Steve, who was frozen and still alive, and his skin didn't even shrink, I was really excited. After carefully putting the frozen Steve into a special container, the attentive Coulson still discovered the hole created by the space gem. Curious, Coulson naturally did not miss any clues and immediately sent people down to search. Seeing this, Yejeju, who knew that it was impossible for the gem to fall into his hands, completely gave up his plan to get the gem and returned to the ice first. After Coulson put the space gem into the box, everyone drove away from the North Pole. After bidding farewell to Coulson and others, Yejeju left alone and returned to New York. What Yejeju didn't know was that Tony had already begun investigating his uncle Obadiah, and the people who took action were none other than his secretary Pepper and life assistant Natasha. Just when he returned home, Pepper and Natasha had entered Obadiah's office. One of them looked out, and the other opened Obadiah's computer and searched for the information inside. Just when Pepper found and downloaded the information about Obadiah's dealings with the gangsters, Natasha reminded Pepper that Obadiah was back. In the panic, Pepper only had time to pull out the USB flash drive, but had no time to close the download page and the computer. The two left the office before Obadiah returned. But before Obadiah entered the office, he saw Pepper leaving in a hurry. After Obadiah entered the office with doubts, he always felt uneasy. When he returned to the desk, Obadiah habitually sat on the desk with his hands on his chest and buttocks. After his butt touched the mouse, the computer screen lit up, immediately attracting Obadiah's attention. He sat down on the office chair. After some checking, he saw the page where he and the gangsters contacted each other for transactions appeared in front of him. Obadiah couldn't help but the corners of his eyes twitched wildly. Suppressing the anger in his heart, Obadiah decided to go completely crazy regardless of everything. Originally, he hesitated to use peaceful means to get the small energy reactor from Tony. But because his true identity was exposed, he took the risk and simply snatched the small ability reactor from Tony. Let Iron Overlord appear in the eyes of the world, let the news shock cover up the news of Tony's death, so that he can completely control the Stark Group. After making up his mind, Obadiah immediately notified the security guards in the building and asked them to hunt down Pepper immediately and prevent Pepper from leaving the building first. Then, Obadiah opened a drawer with a key, took out a small black object and left the office. In the building, the security chief, who was loyal to Obadiah, led a large number of people to surround Pepper and Natasha in the underground garage. Although Pepper was not in danger because of Natasha, she blocked the two from returning and was entangled in the garage of the building. Because of the lack of mobile phone signal in the underground garage, Pepper couldn't call Tony and tell him the truth. Obadiah also drove to Tony's villa in time, but Tony was wearing glasses and earplugs at this time, busy in the workshop, not knowing that danger was approaching. When Obadiah came to the villa, he entered the villa without any obstruction. When he came behind Tony, Tony still didn't notice it at all. This is also Tony's fault. Even if Yejeju reminded him, he still didn't expel Obadiah from the right to enter the villa. This is also the reason why Obadiah can easily enter the villa. Looking at Tony, who was busy with his back to him, Obadiah gritted his teeth and muttered, "Don't blame me, Tony. I can't go to jail. Since you have died once in the Middle East, you should die completely." After that, Obadiah took out the black gadget from his pocket. He put his free hand around Tony's neck, and when Tony wanted to struggle, he pressed the small sonic weapon in his hand against Tony's neck. Tony, who was struggling, immediately trembled like he had the hiccups, his eyes widened, the blue blood vessels on his neck bulged out, and his body fell down weakly. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Across the Heavens, Marvel's Mechanical Hunter. Author, Dachuanchi. Chapter 176. Obadiah put Tony down on the ground and muttered. Tony, my dear nephew, why are you so stubborn? I gave everything for the group, but you don't understand at all and I don't tell you, and you still let people investigate me. Why? Aren't you just lucky? When we were in the Middle East, the Ten Commandments gang didn't kill you as I wanted. It's because you were lucky. Since you survived the catastrophe, why not live well? You must seek death yourself. However, you and I have them to thank. If it weren't for them, I wouldn't be able to get Iron Overlord's design drawings, nor would I be able to get the small energy reactor you designed. Tisk tisk, I have to say it. You and your sworn brother are exactly the same, both are great geniuses, but why are you so ungrateful? Well, don't blame me, Tony. After you die, Stark Group will be mine. Don't worry, I will make Stark Group the largest group in the world. Although Tony's whole body was convulsed and unable to move, he could still hear Obadiah's words clearly because his earplugs fell off during his struggle. He had unspeakable regrets at this time, regretting that he didn't fully trust Yejuju, didn't take action against Obadiah early, and let himself fall into Obadiah's hands. Seeing Tony's murderous eyes, Obadiah pulled up Tony's t-shirt, revealing the small energy reactor on his chest. Obadiah smiled proudly, stretched out his hand to hold the small energy reactor, and said to Tony, I know you can't live without this electromagnetic device. Once I take it away, the bomb fragments in your body will enter your heart and kill you, but, diamond suit, diamond suit, diamond suit, diamond suit. For myself and for Stark's future, you have to die. Forgive me, my nephew. Farewell. After saying that, Obadiah pulled out the small energy reactor. Then he stood up, looked down at Tony who was lying on the ground and was shaking, and turned around and left the villa without any hesitation. Only Jarvis witnessed the entire process, but it was just an intelligent program and was powerless without instructions. Fortunately, Yejuju communicated with Jarvis before he left. Once Tony is in danger, contact the Red Queen and herself as soon as possible. Just after Obadiah left, Jarvis contacted Yejuju. Sir, I'm Jarvis. Mr. Tony is in a bad situation now. His small energy reactor was taken away by Obadiah. Hearing Jarvis's words, Yejuju couldn't help but feel a headache. It was impossible not to hate Tony. Even though he had warned him a long time ago, he still didn't worry about Obadiah. Also, I don't understand that I have clearly let the military occupy the base. Logically speaking, Obadiah couldn't create Iron Overlord without getting the drawings and samples, so why did he take away Tony's small reactor? But this time was obviously not the time to think about this. It was more important to save Tony. Yejuju calmly said to Jarvis. Jarvis, can you control Tony's robotic arm? Yes sir, what do you want me to do? Remember that Tony put his first small reactor into a glass box as a souvenir? Do you know where he put it? Yes, sir, I know. You control the robotic arm to bring the box to Tony, blow up the glass box, and then install the small reactor into Tony's chest. Can you do it? Sir, this is a bit difficult, but I will do what you say. Okay, you must do it, I will come to Los Angeles right now. After saying that, Yejuju stood up and left the room, released his mount outside the door, and galloped towards Los Angeles. At this time, Yejuju still felt a little regretful. Why did he listen to the system's advice and not create the steel armor? Even if there is no system bonus, it can still be used to travel, right? What he didn't know was that S.H.I.E.L.D. found out as soon as he left the house. Seeing Yejuju in such a hurry and ignoring the impact, Fury immediately guessed that something big was going on, and without hesitation asked Coulson to take S.H.I.E.L.D's most advanced plane to chase Yejeju. On the other side, Jarvis controlled the robotic arm and brought the first-generation small reactor in front of Tony. After smashing the glass on the ground, he clumsily controlled the mechanical arm, picked up the small reactor, and placed it on Tony's chest. When Tony, who was still conscious, saw this scene, he could still encourage him. "Good boy, you are so great. Yes, keep going." At the same time, Yejeju, who was speeding at full speed and had just left the New York City area, was stopped by Coulson, who was driving a plane. As soon as he saw that what was blocking him was the familiar airplane from the play, Yejeju couldn't help but secretly scolded himself for getting so anxious that he forgot everything. "I should have thought a long time ago that although there is no suitable flight and time at this time, I can contact S.H.I.E.L.D. I am really stupid." Thinking of this, he put his mount into the space. Yejeju got on the plane without ceremony, and said to Coulson, "Something happened to Tony. I have to rush to Los Angeles, please do it as soon as possible." Coulson did not dare to delay after hearing this. He asked the pilot to close the cabin and said to Yejeju, "Actually, we have also received the news. We know that you are also worried about Tony's safety. The director specially asked me to take you with you." Obviously, Coulson said this on purpose. They actually hadn't received Natasha's report yet, and they just wanted to show their goodwill to Tony through Yejeju. Without further ado, the plane immediately took off and flew towards Los Angeles. Only then did Yejeju have time to think about why Obadiah wanted to take Tony's reactor away. Thinking of the reactor, the biggest possibility is Iron Man, so Yejeju asked Coulson, "Can you tell me where are the drawings and armor samples designed by Tony in the Ten Commandments gang base in the Middle East?" Hearing this, the sharp-minded Coulson immediately thought of something, and his expression became serious and replied, "In the Stark Group, the military commissioned them to design and manufacture new armor, which will be used in actual combat." Hearing this, Yejeju had another headache, sighed and said, "This can be explained, Obadiah must have made a new armor. But when the power drive problem could not be solved, he would snatch Tony's reactor. Coulson, I have to despise those senior military officials in your army. Isn't this what they deserve? Obadiah is not a good person. Letting him make the armor will cause trouble for everyone. Alas, it seems that there will be a lot to do in Los Angeles." Hearing this, Coulson was also embarrassed. Although he was not in the military, he disagreed with some of the military's practices and even despised them. After knowing the general situation, Yejeju didn't have the heart to think so much. It would be better to close his eyes and have a good rest for a while, and then fight with Iron Overlord when he got there. Across the Heavens, Marvel's Mechanical Hunter. Author, Dachuan Chi. Chapter 177. It has to be said that the plane of S.H.I.E.L.D. is very powerful. The fastest flight would take 6 hours, but the plane of S.H.I.E.L.D. flew over Los Angeles within 3 hours. At this time, Tony had fully recovered an hour ago. At this time, he was equipped with Mark II and rushed into the Stark building. Without much effort, he got rid of Obadiah's confidants in the building, and rescued Pepper and the other two. Tony asked them to leave the building immediately and searched the whole building for Obadiah, the culprit, ready to beat him up and take revenge. Obadiah received the news when Tony arrived. At this time, he was looking at the ironmonger in front of him with satisfaction. After the reactor was installed, he was fully activated and smiled triumphantly. The next moment, Obadiah climbed from the side of the armor to the chest of the armor, where the cockpit of the armor was exposed. After getting into the cockpit and closing the door, the position of Ironmonger's eyes and chest showed a dazzling white light. Then, Ironmonger started to move. He stretched his arms and did a few simple movements, then he lifted his legs and stepped out. Only then did Ironmonger reveal his true face. The huge monster, which was 2 meters and 5 meters tall and 1 meter wide, made Mark II, which was not short, look much weaker in front of it. After searching for a while, Tony, wearing Mark II, also found this underground laboratory and stood face to face with Ironmonger standing in the same place. At this time, Obadiah, who was in Ironmonger's body, took the lead and said, "Wow, Tony, I really have to say that you are really lucky and you are not dead yet. I didn't expect that you had stock in addition to the reactor on your chest. I underestimated you." After a pause, Obadiah continued, "But with your bean sprout-like small body, can you be the opponent of my Big Mac and Ironmonger? Ha ha." After speaking, Obadiah couldn't help laughing wildly. Tony behind the mask heard this and gritted his teeth and said, "Obadiah, I have always respected you as an uncle, why do you do this? Are you not satisfied as the CEO of Stark Group?" "Ha ha, satisfied. Do you know how Stark started? Didn't it rely on the research and development of weapons for the military to become such a big group today? What's wrong with me selling arms to KB members? Isn't that money? You came back and stopped Stark from developing weapons without saying a word. Do you take me seriously?" "Ah." Obadiah heard this and retorted angrily. Tony heard this and felt that there was no need for Obadiah to continue talking. It would be better to defeat him, beat him up, and send him to prison. Thinking of this, Tony opened his hands, bursting with energy, and rushed towards Obadiah. Obadiah saw this and waved his hand unceremoniously and slapped him. With a loud bang, Tony, who was rushing at high speed, was slapped by Obadiah and flew away. He flew backwards for more than 10 meters before hitting the wall and stopped. Tony in the armor was not seriously injured because of the armor's buffer, but he was not feeling well. At the same time, Jarvis' voice came. "Sir, the armor surface has been hit hard by external force and has been slightly damaged by 10%. This is not a solution. The best advice is that you can fight with the opponent remotely and try to avoid close physical contact." After listening to Jarvis's advice, Tony cursed shit inwardly. Noticing that Iron Overlord had raised his right hand, he immediately stood up and prepared to dodge at any time. At this moment, Iron Overlord raised his right hand and his small arm turned woohoo. The small machine gun immediately opened fire and shot at Tony's location. Although Tony was wearing an iron armor, he did not dare to easily resist the bombardment of the machine gun. He used his small and flexible body and powerful kinetic energy to dodge at high speed. With this dodge, the battlefield of the two people quickly shifted away, and soon moved from underground to the ground. Once on the ground, the flexibility of Mark II was maximized. At least it was not so easy for Ironmonger to catch Mark II. When the battle happened, Coulson also received the news and immediately flew to the battle site. At this time, Mark II and Ironmonger were chasing each other on the road. From time to time, Ironmonger shot Mark II with machine guns, destroying the buildings and GG signs on the roadside and the cars parked on the roadside. Many cars driving on the road also suffered. Those who were lucky enough to brake the car in time and escaped from the car, luckily avoiding death. Those who were unlucky were smashed into pieces and exploded into fireballs by the machine gun. Seeing this, Tony was very regretful in his heart. He regretted giving Obadiah the opportunity to resist, which led to the death of these innocent people. At this moment, Coulson's plane also flew to the top of the building. Without waiting for the plane to stop, Yejuju rushed out of the slowly opened cabin door, because he had received a system prompt. "Congratulations, host, triggering the world mission. Assist Tony, kill Obadiah, and destroy Iron Overlord, reward 5,000 experience points, reward the host's exclusive weapons, small energy cannon manufacturing drawings." No choice, the temptation of the exclusive weapon, the small energy cannon, is too great. He had long been distressed about the lack of power of his weapon. After finally getting the weapon, he would never allow Ironmonger and Obadiah to die in Tony's hands. It would be strange if he was not anxious. Yejuju's speed was so fast that even Coulson couldn't stop him in time. He had to wait until the plane stopped before he rushed out of the plane with his men and rushed to the bottom of the building. At this time, Yejuju had already rushed to the lobby on the first floor, and saw from a distance that the road 100 meters away from the building was flashing with fire from time to time. A tall figure, closely chasing after a figure covered in gold and red, fired shells one after another. There was nothing to say, waving his hand to release 10 modified mechanical dogs, and let Red Queen control them to rush towards Ironmonger. 10 mechanical dogs rushed into the battlefield, and Tony also knew through Jarvis, and he was secretly relieved. There was no way, he could not do anything to the tall and powerful Ironmonger for the time being. After all, he couldn't beat Ironmonger in close combat, and his small missiles were blocked by Ironmonger's machine guns and halfway interception, so they couldn't work. The only arc pulse cannon on his palm couldn't fire continuously because the first-generation reactor didn't have enough energy, and the threat to Ironmonger was also not worth mentioning. This caused Tony to dodge everywhere, and he couldn't do anything to Ironmonger. At this time, Obadiah was sitting in Ironmonger, and he was also very proud. So what if you are a genius, Tony? Across the Heavens, Marvel's Mechanical Hunter. Author, Dachuanchi. Chapter 178. Speaking of which, this set of Iron Overlord armor was developed based on Tony's Mark I. Now, Tony, the inventor, has been beaten so hard that he has no power to fight back. What does this mean? This shows that Obadiah's philosophy is correct and the most powerful. Just when he was feeling proud, a group of mechanical dogs unexpectedly rushed out from behind and unceremoniously sprayed large amounts of small energy shells at the Iron Overlord's back from 10 meters away. Immediately, numerous holes of various sizes were punched into Iron Overlord's back, and even large amounts of white smoke came out of the iron armor. Obviously, although the energy cannonballs of the mechanical dog did not penetrate its armor, it also corroded a large area of the armor's surface. Searched can on Google. Obadiah felt the armor on Iron Overlord's back tremble, and when he heard a slight cheesy sound behind him, he guessed that something had attacked him behind him. Without thinking, Iron Overlord's tall body turned around, and at the same time raised the machine cannon on his right hand, ready to fire at any time. The 10 mechanical dogs were also very alert. With their dexterity, they quickly dispersed the moment Iron Overlord turned around, and they did not forget to keep shooting at Iron Overlord's steel body. Obadiah turned around and saw what was attacking it. He was surprised by the 10 mechanical creatures that also had small reactors installed on their necks. Do you still think that these things are mechanical creatures that Tony developed behind his back? Otherwise, why do these mechanical dogs also have reactors on their necks? But even though there are many mechanical dogs, the energy cannonballs they fire cannot penetrate the armor on their bodies. Obadiah immediately felt emboldened. He raised his hand and a burst of cannonballs shot out. At the same time, the small missiles on his shoulders began to shake and lock onto the target, preparing a missile to destroy a mechanical dog. Tony also took advantage of this moment to launch an attack from behind Obadiah. At this time, he didn't care if the energy in the reactor was running low. With the help of Yejuju's mechanical dog, how long would it take if he didn't get rid of Obadiah? For a time, Obadiah's Iron Overlord was ambushed from all sides. Iron Overlord resisted the attack of the energy cannon, and while moving the cannon to fight back, he quickly locked on a mechanical dog and launched a small missile. Yejuju, who was watching the battle from a distance, immediately ordered the Red Queen to have the other 9 mechanical dogs fire energy cannonballs at the same time to snipe the small missiles. Fortunately, the Red Queen's supercomputing power was brought into full play at this moment. Finally, when the small missile was about to hit the locked mechanical dog, the small missile was detonated and destroyed. Next, the battle turned into a one-sided suppression. Of course, the suppressed party is naturally the Iron Overlord. There was no way, the 10 mechanical dogs plus the same Tony made Obadiah suddenly confused. Not only must you find opportunities to shoot the mechanical dog, but you must also prevent the mechanical dog from jumping on it. No way. Obadiah also discovered that although the energy cannonballs fired by these mechanical dogs could not penetrate its outer armor, but their 2-meter-long tail spines made Obadiah panic. Although Iron Overlord's outer armor is already very hard, he is not confident that after the mechanical dog pounces on him, those fragile joints can withstand the attack of the mechanical dog's tail spines. You know, in these gaps. Most of them are connected by wires and rubber tubes. Once they are punctured, they will leak. This will cause the entire armor to fall into passive sluggishness. Even parts of the body are in dangerous situations where they cannot move. By that time, no matter how huge and strong the Iron Overlord's body is, he will become a lamb to be slaughtered and will be unable to fight back. And since Obadiah has snatched Tony's reactor, he plans to completely control the Stark group regardless of the consequences. If he is defeated by Tony, the person who greets him will spend the rest of his life in prison, even if he does not die. At this time, Obadiah fully activates the energy in the reactor, not only shooting continuously so as not to waste your energy. He also activated the mechanical arm on his left hand to block all the mechanical dogs that were knocking him down. It would even be better to smash the mechanical dog's body to give him a chance to breathe. Yes, it's time to breathe. Because, under the control of the Red Queen, the mechanical dog attacked too frequently, leaving almost no room for Obadiah to rest. One after another, mechanical dogs rushed forward from all directions. Even though Iron Overlord was a mechanical creation, very powerful in terms of strength and speed, he still couldn't withstand the attacks of so many mechanical dogs and Tony. Sure enough, after Iron Overlord drove away the approaching mechanical dogs several times, a mechanical dog finally jumped on him. The mechanical dog's attack speed was also very fast. Before Iron Overlord could react, a spike pierced the gap in the elbow of its left hand, piercing the energy transmission pipe inside. Immediately, Iron Overlord's left elbow could no longer flexibly block attacks. From now on, he could no longer block the mechanical dog's attacks at will. It has to be said that Obadiah is indeed Tony's nemesis. Even at this time, he did not admit defeat, but rushed into the sky with the 2 mechanical dogs on his body. Fortunately, Yejuju reacted quickly and asked the Red Queen to let all the mechanical dogs on Iron Overlord jump to the ground when Iron Overlord took off, thus avoiding the tragedy of the mechanical dog being taken up into the sky and falling down and being damaged. Obadiah, who flew 100 meters into the air, also discovered the weakness of the mechanical dog at this time, that is, the mechanical dog could not fight in the air, but it gave him a chance to win. Obadiah, who was hovering in the air, looked at the mechanical dog on the ground and couldn't help laughing proudly and said, "I thought these little things were so powerful. It turns out that they are just like this. Tony, I have to say that you always surprise me again and again. It was like this in the Middle East, and it was also the same after I robbed your reactor, and these mechanical creatures are even more so. It really surprised me. Haha, but since these little things can't take off, what chance do you have of winning? Haha." After saying that, Obadiah sprayed flames from the bottom of his feet, and rushed towards Tony, who was also hovering in the air. Seeing this, Yejuju did not hesitate and immediately contacted Jarvis through Red Queen, and answered Tony's call. "Tony, how much energy do you have now?" "Oh, yeah, are you here too? That's great, thank you for coming to help me. However, the situation of my reactor is not optimistic, and there is less than 30% energy left. Listen to me, Tony. I have a plan. Your armor is made of aviation materials and can withstand freezing at high altitudes, but Obadiah's big guy can't. And you are obviously at a disadvantage fighting it at low altitude. Only by freezing it, we have a chance, understand? Oh, God. How could I ignore such an obvious weakness? Thank you, yeah. I know what to do. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Across the Heavens, Marvel's Mechanical Hunter. Author, Dachuan Chi. Chapter 179. After saying that, Tony had once again dodged Iron Overlord's attack and flew straight up into the sky. Google search reading. Behind him, Obadiah took off and caught up without hesitation. On the ground, Yejuju and Coulson and others, who rushed out of the building and came to Yejuju's side, saw two steel armors flying high into the sky, one behind the other. The traces of the two men were soon lost, and only white traces left in the sky after the flight were seen. Looking up at the sky, Coulson asked worriedly. "Mr. Ye, do you think Tony can beat that big guy?" Yejuju, who also looked up at the sky, heard this and said firmly. "Yes, in this world's understanding of mechas, only Tony is the most powerful. Obadiah can't do it." "Oh, really? That's good. Otherwise, we really can't do anything with that big guy. You don't have to worry. No matter how powerful that big guy is, he can't get rid of the law of conservation of energy. Without energy, it's just a pile of useless metal." While the two were talking, Tony and Iron Overlord had already flown into the sky more than 10,000 meters high. At this time, Tony had received a warning from Jarvis. "Sir, the armor has entered the high-altitude cold air layer. The exterior of the armor is suffering from freezing damage, and energy consumption has begun to increase. Please be prepared to lower the flight altitude at any time, sir." Hearing this, Tony didn't worry about himself at all. Instead, he was very excited and continued to increase the flying height. When he thought about it, although the outer armor of Obadiah's big guy was not made of aerospace materials, but after all, the body shape is there. If it is just frozen on the outside, it will not affect the internal transmission system. It is safer to fly higher. In fact, this was indeed the case. Although ice had condensed on the body of the Iron Overlord chasing behind him, but the internal operations are still continuing. If he turns around and lowers his altitude at this moment, Latte Overlord will have no choice but to be captured by Obadiah. But Obadiah knew nothing about this, and was still chasing after Tony excitedly, intent on killing Tony so that he could inherit everything from Tony and the Stark Group. There was a reason why he was excited at this time. He originally thought that Tony only had one reactor, and if he took it away, Tony would definitely die. Although the result was beyond his expectation, Tony could not beat him after all, and he was still confident of killing Tony. Although 10 more mechanical dogs appeared later, making him confused, but after finding a way to restrain himself, he couldn't help but feel happy. Let's not talk about the combat capabilities of 10 mechanical dogs. Even the 10 reactors on the mechanical dog will be his biggest gain. And as long as he kills Tony, all these will become his spoils. Even if the losers in the group are unable to replicate the reactor in a short period of time, he can rely on 11 reactors to create 11 more Iron Overlords. By then, it will be impossible for Stark not to become the world's largest arms group. Think about it, how much benefit will it bring to him because the group manufactures a large number of armors and is purchased by the military or even other forces. Thinking of this, he could no longer consider the disadvantages of the suit not being able to fly at high altitudes, and he only had eyes for Tony. Seeing Tony getting closer and closer to him, Obadiah even saw himself tearing Tony's armor to pieces, and Tony was dying and begging him to spare his life. Unfortunately, before he could be happy for long, he suddenly heard a series of clicking sounds coming from inside the armor. Before he could understand what was going on, all the power systems of the armor stopped rotating. The next second, the armor continued to rush up for a few meters in the air. After a brief pause, it turned around and fell to the ground faster and faster. This time, Obadiah was so frightened that he lost his soul and his face quickly turned pale. It was also at this time that he figured out what was going on. Although he is not an inventor or scientist like Tony, he still understands a truth. The higher you are in the sky, the colder the cold current becomes. If it is not made of special metal, it will not be able to withstand the invasion of these cold currents. At this moment, Obadiah regretted extremely that he had not thought of this situation, and only considered the defensive strength of the armor, which led to this ending. And Tony had obviously thought of this a long time ago, otherwise how could he be tempted to chase him to an altitude of tens of thousands of meters? At this time, he regretted his impulsive arrogance, but it was no longer helpful. He could only wait in fear for the moment when the armor crashed. Tony also received a reminder from Jarvis at this time, and when his energy was about to be exhausted, he turned around and chased the falling Obadiah. He was right to do so. You know, since he encountered the same situation in the play and restarted the armor at the moment of crashing, who can guarantee that Obadiah will not do the same thing? Obviously, Tony also thought of this and wanted to give Obadiah something cruel. What he had to do was to quickly catch up with Obadiah and accelerate his fall before he had time to restart. Even if Obadiah cannot be knocked to the ground, he still has no time to restart the armor's power system. The two of them fell to the ground at high speed, one after the other. The only difference was that one was in free fall, while the other was using the speed of his armor to the extreme, much faster than the falling speed. It took only a few seconds for Tony to fly above Obadiah's body. At this time, the armor on the surface of Ironmonger had turned red, obviously because of the friction of the air, causing the outer armor to heat up. Seeing this, Tony wisely did not choose to use his palms to push Ironmonger, but turned his body upside down, and the palm pusher burst out, kicking Ironmonger fiercely with 2 feet. There was a loud clang in the sky, and Ironmonger, who was already falling at a high speed, fell to the ground at an even faster speed. Obadiah in Ironmonger was even more shocked by this, and his brain was buzzing, and his whole brain began to be confused, so how could he think of restarting the system? In this way, every 100 meters, Tony would catch up with Ironmonger and kick him, falling to the ground faster than a meteor. Ironmonger's figure finally reappeared in front of Yejuju and others. Yejuju had a very good vision and could see that the surface of Ironmonger's armor was already covered with flames, just like a meteor falling from space to the earth. If nothing unexpected happened, Ironmonger would fall to the ground and be torn into pieces by the huge impact force, and Obadiah would die miserably. But Yejuju was still worried, thinking of Tony restarting the system at the last moment in the play and avoiding this disaster. In order to prevent this from happening, Yejuju immediately released his Mount Zufeng from space and chased at high speed to the place where Ironmonger fell. Across the Heavens, Marvel's Mechanical Hunter. Author, Dachuan. Chapter 180. Yejuju's plan was simple. He was going to hit Obadiah again before he fell. Diamond suit, diamond suit, diamond suit, diamond suit. This way, he could naturally ensure that he could destroy Ironmonger and kill Obadiah before Tony and complete the mission. Seeing Yejuju rushing out, Carlson cursed shit with a dark face and hurriedly asked his men to find a car to catch up. Behind Yejuju, the 10 mechanical dogs would naturally not fall behind and also chased after him. In fact, Carlson did this for selfish reasons. He really wanted to get Obadiah's Ironmonger, in an attempt to let S.H.I.E.L.D. also have such a useful armor, and then S.H.I.E.L.D. would have a powerful helper. In this case, he certainly couldn't fall behind Yejuju and Tony. In the sky, Tony no longer had the energy to burst out and kick Ironmonger. He had to rely on the inertia of falling to chase after Ironmonger, and still didn't want to let Obadiah go easily. As they got closer and closer to the ground, Obadiah was so scared that he almost stopped breathing, thinking over and over again how to save himself. When he was 200 or 300 meters away from the ground, Obadiah remembered the only way to save himself, which was to restart the power system and pray that the armor could recover and fly back into the sky. Thinking of this, Obadiah immediately shouted, "Iron Overlord, restart the power system." Unfortunately, after the first sound, there was a short buzz sound from inside the armor and then no more sound came. Diamond suit, diamond suit. But it gave Obadiah hope of survival, and he immediately shouted, "Iron Overlord, restart for me. Iron Overlord, restart quickly." Buzz, buzz, whoosh, squeak. Sounds rang out in a series. Seeing that the armor was about to recover its kinetic energy, Obadiah was also glad that he was about to survive. Tony was in the sky above Ironmonger, so he naturally saw the intermittent white light on the chest and eyes of Ironmonger's armor. He immediately knew that the armor was about to recover, so there was no hesitation. He raised his hands without hesitation, and two dazzling white arcs of light shot out. With the sound of sizzle, clang, Ironmonger was attacked by Tony before it was fully activated, and his body accelerated to crash into the ground. Unfortunately, Tony was also at the end of his strength at this time. The arc lasted less than a second before the energy was consumed. If Jarvis had not transferred all the remaining energy to the bottom of the armor, supporting Tony and offsetting almost all the inertia of the descent, he would have fallen to the ground. Otherwise, Tony might have fallen to the ground like Ironmonger, and even if he didn't die, he would have been shocked to death by ruptured internal organs. When Ironmonger was about to fall to the ground, Ironmonger's system finally started again, and he might have fully recovered in the next second and flew back into the sky. Obadiah was still rejoicing that he had finally got a chance to turn things around, not only defeating Tony, but also getting everything. At this moment, the roar of a motorcycle came from a distance. Before Obadiah could look in the direction of the sound, he felt a dark shadow rushing towards him from the air. The next second, with a clang and boom, the dark shadow hit Ironmonger hard. This collision caused Ironmonger, who was about to restore the power system, to crash into the ground at high speed again. This time, not only did Ironmonger fail to offset the inertia and impact of falling from a high altitude, but it strengthened it all. This was not over yet. After the collision, there were 10 more figures, one after another, as if relaying. One after another, they hit Ironmonger, leaving him no chance to restart the power system, and finally hit him heavily on the concrete floor. With a loud boom, a large pit with a diameter of 10 meters and a depth of 2 meters was knocked out of the hard concrete floor. All this was done by Yejuju, who arrived later. It was very simple to say. Yejuju first drove Zufeng, saw the location where Iron Overlord fell, and with the super high speed, lifted the front of the car to send Zufeng out, and hit Iron Overlord hard. He also took advantage of the moment when Zufeng flew up and rolled to the ground. Then, in order to ensure that everything was foolproof, Yejuju gave orders to Warwolf and Red Queen. Even if the mechanical dog was completely damaged, Iron Overlord had no chance to restart and crash to the ground. A few dozen meters away from here, Tony also fell to the ground. Although he also cracked the concrete floor, it was because of Jarvis's last effort. The armor was only slightly damaged, and Tony inside the armor was not hurt. Tony just felt dizzy and stuffy in the chest. After rolling and standing up neatly from the ground, Yejuju rushed to the big pit hit by Iron Overlord to check it out without checking Tony's condition. Seeing this, Yejuju couldn't help but smack his lips. At this time, Iron Overlord could no longer be called a battle armor, and was embedded in the ground with his back facing up. The battle armor on his chest had long flown away, and 3 of his limbs were broken and flew away. Only one right leg was barely connected to his lower body, revealing Obadiah in his chest, with blood flowing from the corner of his mouth, his eyes closed, and a golden face. Obviously, even if Obadiah was not dead at this time, he was seriously injured and unconscious. Yejuju did not want Obadiah to survive, so he jumped into the pit, came in front of Obadiah, and punched Obadiah's heart without hesitation. With a bang punch, the huge force immediately stopped Obadiah's already weak heart. When he looked at Obadiah again, he didn't even wake up, and a lot of blood was flowing out of his mouth. His face turned from golden to purple, and it was obvious that he was dead. A few seconds later, the system sounded. Congratulations to the host for completing the world mission. Assist Tony, kill Obadiah, and destroy Iron Overlord, reward 5,000 experience points, reward the host's exclusive weapon, and small energy cannon manufacturing blueprint *1. After hearing the system's prompt, Yejuju finally breathed a sigh of relief. He knew that if he didn't kill Obadiah at this time, he would have no chance to kill him again. After all, the laws of this country are so hummed. If Obadiah didn't die, no matter if he fell into Tony's hands, SHIELD, or the police, he would not be sentenced to death, and the most likely thing would be life imprisonment. Yejuju, who was completely relieved, climbed out of the pit. Under the guidance of Red Queen, he found the almost damaged Mount Zufeng and 10 mechanical dogs with different injuries, and put them all into the space. However, Yejuju was very considerate and found the reactor of Iron Overlord and reinstalled it into Tony's chest. Tony, who was almost suffocated to death, came back to life. Tony, who breathed fresh air again, could not hide his excitement. He hugged Yejuju tightly and said, "Brother, thank you again for saving me again. If it weren't for you, I would never be able to eat delicious hamburgers again."